there's lots of different steps in our screening processes. Every resume will be reviewed. Every essential criteria might be added. Every automated filter or keyword search that we use, all of these choices help us decide who gets considered and who gets excluded, who we open doors to and who we close doors to throughout the hiring processes. But screening is really where inclusion can begin and where we can make a fundamental difference to expanding exclusive hiring. Because this is where exclusion becomes generally baked into the process, where we are filtering out and screening out people with disabilities long before we actually get to meet them, long before we meet the candidate. Most of the time, recruiters and decision makers are screening with a reject first mindset, that we're aiming to actually reject them first and say, what's missing? We're looking at resumes and applications and going, they don't have this, screen them out. They don't have a particular degree that we'd like, so we'll screen them out. They don't have 10 years of experience, but they've got 8, so we'll screen them out. Or they don't have a driver's license. And I'm like, for a lot of jobs, do we really need the driver's license? Or is that just a convenient thing that if somebody needs to go somewhere, we'd rather they were able to do it rather than somebody else in the team? So if we adopt a screen-in mindset, then we want to flip the lens. We want to look at our candidates quite differently. So we want to, instead of looking at what's missing, start looking at what strengths does this person have? What potential can we see in a relationship and an association between their capabilities and what we need for the task? And what evidence suggests that they could do the core parts of this job? And when we look at the tasks, the processes and the outputs, it gives us a lot more room and wiggle room, if you could call it that, to screen people in rather than looking at we want all of the things in one person for our particular job. But if we do it well and have reasons to screen people in, it might not be screening them in for that particular job, but it might be screening them also in for other roles within the context of our organisation. And so what this episode challenges employers to do and what it challenges you to do is to flip the question from why not, so why are we screening these people out, which is around the reasoning of why don't we want to include them or bring them forward in our processes, to why not yet. And opening that up to why not yet gives us the opportunity to engage with that candidate a little bit more throughout the screening processes for us to try and screen them in rather than screen them out. Yeah, it's a very positive mindset. It's looking for people's ability to contribute rather than a negative one that's about deficit. So things like excellent verbal communication. When I ask employers, what does that even mean? What does excellent verbal communication look like? We want people to be resilient. Is that because we're putting them in an environment that's not good for them and we want them to be able to keep up or to just cope with it rather than improve our processes? Or are we looking for people that are actually trying to be adaptable with change? They're very different keywords and biased words. Also, the idea of high energy. There's some fantastic ideas around people caring a lot more about how we do our jobs rather than actually doing the jobs themselves. And that comes out a lot in our screening processes when we use these biased keywords, which is really a preference for how we would like people to behave in our workplace rather than their ability to actually complete the task and complete the job. Because with inclusive hiring, we really want to be focusing on the actual job needs and how we can think about how those people can contribute to the job, which again is more around that question of why not yet. We know from the research that people with disability are judged a lot more on their perceived deficits than those that don't have disability. And we touched on that on episode 1 with all of those fears. And because of that, those deficits will actually compound negatively for them when we look at hiring as a screening out process. So screening them in is really about having an open mindset that looks at curiosity instead of judgment. We're interested in how we can contribute rather than judging them for other things. Capability over credentials. And we know there's many limitations of looking at formal aspects of education as proxies for on-the-job performance. We want to look at the context of how people have applied their capabilities rather than over our assumptions of what they can and can't do. And we really want to be focusing on their potential to do the job rather than how they perform throughout those screening processes, because we will have a different episode looking at interviews, but really we want to be looking at what that person can actually do for the job rather than our perceptions of who they are and their personality and aspects. So why not exclude them yet? Let's ask a few more follow-up questions and be a bit more diagnostic about how could this person contribute to our organization. No, it's absolutely not. It's actually a way more strategic approach to how we look at hiring, because we're making better decisions, and we're making decisions based on things that matter for the job, the output and performance, not on things that are superficial or easy to measure. And that has always been one of the biggest challenges we've had in traditional recruitment and selection and talent acquisition, is those proxies that we use for on-the-job performance absolutely outdated, but then we have to understand what to replace them with. And I think our approach that we're doing in our podcast series gives employers some options about how we can actually rework aspects of the hiring process that benefits all candidates, not just those with disability. So what the problem is with traditional job descriptions is a lot of them say these are all the things we would like the person to have. It's kind of like a wish list. But for most of the stuff, we can actually train them on the job, and we don't really want someone that's fully formed in all these different criteria of what we can doing. So because of that and that curiosity and the why not yet approach, it helps us to shift the question from do they have everything now to can they learn what's needed, or can we put those supports in place to teach them the aspects that we need? Exactly. If screening determines who gets to be in the room, then interviewing determines how we see them once they're there. And that's where we're going to go in our next episode.